Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel where I talk about books and where I am obsessed with lists. So I found this list of the 25 scariest books ever written, and this list was put out by Barnes and Nobles. Barnes and Noble. It's not a bad list, actually, but it's not a perfect list. So I am going to sort it out in this tier ranking. So do hit that like button and do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let's jump in and take a look at our categories. So I have not read every book on this list, so for the books that I haven't read, they are going to fall into one of two categories. The first being Flying Pig, which is to say that I will read this book when pigs fly, which is to say never. I have no intention to ever read this book for variety of reasons that I'll get into as they come up. The next category is definitely maybe. So if the book I haven't read, but I like the premise, or I've heard good things about it, read some good reviews, there's something about the author that I want to check out, then I will definitely maybe read that book. And for the books that I have read, they're going to fall into one of two categories. The first being Steven Seagal. Now, Steven Seagal is a self-proclaimed master at a lot of things, but in actuality, he just makes really bad movies. So if I put a book in the Steven Seagal category, I do not mean that in a positive way. And the other category is Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda is an actor who made many movies, but I know her from the lady who made workout videos, and she would show people how to exercise and frequently reminds us to breathe.
Don't forget to breathe. 6, 7, 8.
So I figure if you're reading a really good horror book, it's probably a good idea to have Jane Fonda's exercise videos playing in the background so you don't forget to breathe. So for the really good horror books, or the books that I really liked, they are going in the Jane Fonda category. All right, let's jump into it. We have 25 books to sort out. Starting with Little Eve by Catriona Ward. Now, I love me some Catriona Ward. She has put out 5 books, and I loved them all. And you can check out my ranking of Catriona Ward's novels, and you will see that Little Eve ranks quite high. This is a historical fiction novel centered around a cult, and that begins with a mass murder or mass suicide with 1 or 2 or maybe 3 survivors. So we follow the story of one of the survivors, and we have to piece together what actually happened and what the cult was really about. This is an excellent book. Definitely Jane Fonda material.
Don't forget to breathe.
Next up, we have Hunted by Darcy Coates. Now, I have not read anything by Darcy Coates before, but she is a successful and prolific horror writer that I've been hearing good things about, so I definitely need to check her out, check out her work. And Hunted has gotten very good reviews, actually. On Goodreads, it has an aggregate star rating of 4.06, which is quite high. And Hunted is about a young woman who goes hiking. She goes missing, and when the search party is called off, her friends set out to try to find her, and they find things, scary things. So it's kind of a crime horror hybrid. Now, I definitely need to check out Darcy Coates. I don't know if this is the book that I should begin my Darcy Coates journey with, but I'm definitely going to check her out. So this book, definitely maybe we'll check it out. Next up, we have The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This was a very popular book, came out a few years ago, won the Bram Stoker Award. This is not a book. A lot of people loved this book. I am not one of those people, unfortunately. Now, this is a young man who falls out of favor with his community, and so he returns to the Indian reservation he grew up in, and he tries to patch things up. tries to make amends. And that part of the story I really like. That part of the story worked on me. But the horror elements that it introduces were a complete miss on me. So this is quite harsh to put it in a Steven Seagal category. But there's no middle ground in this video, right? It's either it works or it doesn't, and the horror aspects did not work on me. So a little bit harsh to call it Steven Seagal, but it's certainly not Jane Fonda material. So there we have it. Next up, we have The Troop by Nick Cutter. Now, I love me some Nick Cutter. And this book is not an exception. This is definitely Jane Fonda material.
Don't forget to breathe.
So in The Troop, we have a troop of Boy Scouts in Canada. They go off on a retreat on an island. And on the island, this man shows up, and this man is carrying a deadly virus. So the kids, they have to try to avoid catching the virus, and they have to try to survive on the island. And they don't succeed 100% on either of those endeavors. So here we have some nice body horror. We also have survivalist aspects. We have the evil kid tropes. There's a lot going on in this book, a lot to like. Definitely Jane Fonda material. Incidentally, Nick Cutter has a new book coming out in a few months. I'm very excited about that. And he is going to come on this channel and talk with me about it. And talk with me about his writing, his career, the state of horror. So I'm looking forward to that. So if you're not subscribed to this channel, definitely hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on that opportunity. And it's thanks to all the subscribers that gives me the opportunity to have these very creative and excellent writers to come on this channel and talk with me about their work. So thank you for that. And Nick Cutter, what's a pen name for writer Craig Davidson, and the Craig Davidson books are excellent too. So he's a really nice guy and an excellent writer. So I am very much looking forward to sharing our conversation with you. Coming up next, we have Nothing But Blackened Teeth. That is a cool looking cover, and that is a cool title. Unfortunately, this book has not been getting good ratings. Actually, on Goodreads, it has an average star rating of 2.67, which is crazy low, and that's from over 8,000 reviews. So this is a book by Cassandra Call from 2021, and it is a haunting story, I believe. A haunting steeped in Japanese folklore. Now, to be honest with you, from what little I know of Japanese folklore, or what little I've experienced or read from Japanese folklore, has not worked on me at all. It seems very much steeped in superstition and ghosts. I think ghosts are silly. They're definitely not scary. And I have no interest in ghosts. So Japanese folklore is not a selling point for me. Also, this is supposed to be a referential book. Like, the characters are constantly talking about horror tropes and, you know, how they should act if they're caught in a horror story. This type of referential horror doesn't really work on me. So this book does not have a lot that is appealing to me. So this is a flying pig. We have very low very low Goodreads rating. We have Japanese folklore, referential book. No, that's probably not a book for me. Up next, we have Road of Bones by Christopher Golden. I have not read this book. I did read, I have read another one of Christopher Golden's books. It's called Ararat, and it is not a book that I enjoyed. Yeah, so I'm not particularly eager to read another Christopher Golden book. And Apparently, Road of Bones is set in Siberia on a road where supposedly a lot of people are buried that were killed by Stalin, something like that. So there are a lot of ghosts in this book. It sounds like it's going to be kind of a silly horror, which Aradad, the other book from him I read, was quite silly. And I'm a serious man. I'm looking for serious horror. So I'm not going to read this book. No, I think with the right mindset, like if I were in the mood for something silly, I might turn to Christopher Golden, but that's unlikely to happen. Next up, we have Come Closer by Sarah Grant. This is not a scary book at all. I did not like this book. It's a demon possession, but the book hits one note and just stays on that note throughout the 140 or so pages. It's quite dull, quite repetitive. I'm surprised, actually, surprised to find it on this book, on this list. If you'd like to hear my deeper dive on this book, I do talk about it in my video, Top 10 Horror for Dumb People. Also, Christopher Golden's Ararat is in that video as well. But it should not be on the list of scary books. Next up, we have Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova from 2021. Excuse me, 2023. And this book has been getting a lot of good buzz. It has an average star rating on Goodreads of 4.15, which was quite high. It is about a boy who becomes a monster and the people who love him. It's supposedly a cathartic and precise portrait of being human. Okay, it sounds like the kind of book the kind of horror book that's about something, that's going to try to make me feel something positive, which is a tough sell on me. I like that in literary fiction. For my horror, I just want to be psychologically challenged. I want to be disturbed. I don't really want to feel what it's like to be human. It's not really my goal when I read horror. I am also a bit nervous because this is a contemporary American book. I know that Gerardo Samano Cordova is originally from Mexico City, but he was educated in the U.S., so I'm going to consider this a contemporary U.S. horror book. And these contemporary U.S. horror books have not been working on me at all. I feel like there's a lot of preaching going on, a lot of virtue signaling going on, and not really focused on the story, not really focused on the horror. I don't know if this book, Monstrilio, falls into that trap, but to be honest with you, I am hesitant to jump into a contemporary U.S. horror book. But I have been hearing good things about it, so maybe my hesitation won't last forever. So I will definitely, maybe, emphasis on the maybe, check out Monstrilio. Next up, we have Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright. And this is an exquisite book. Definitely Jane Fonda material.
Don't forget to breathe.
Now, I would not consider Exquisite Corpse to be a horror book. A lot of horrific things happen in it, but that is not what makes a book horror, in my opinion. So it's not a horror book, and it's not scary, I would think, but there are some scary passages. There's some tense, very tense passages. It's not a horror book, but it is an excellent book. It's a serial killer from the UK. He goes to the US and to New Orleans, and he meets another serial killer, and they try to have a relationship that does not go well. Everybody in this book has AIDS, and they try to give AIDS to other people. So the author, Poppy Z. Bright, she makes a lot of bold choices in this book, and I admire her for that, and she pulls it off. And this book is gorgeously written, beautifully paced as well. Love it. 5 stars. Moving on, What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Now, I have not read this book. I recently read another T. Kingfisher book, A House with Good Bones, which I quite liked, but it was empty calories. Like, it was immediately forgettable. It was very light on the horror. But I did enjoy it. I thought it was well written, and the protagonist was charming. So I would like to read something else by T. Kingfisher. However, What Moves the Dead is a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's classic, The Fall of the House of Usher. The Fall of the House of Usher is probably my favorite short story of all time. I am not opposed to retellings. In fact, I recently read Demon Copperhead, which is a retelling of David Copperfield, and I quite like that book. I'm not opposed to retellings. However, I think that the fanboy in me is not going to react well to somebody touching Edgar Allan Poe's classic Follow the House of Usher. It might be very good, but I just don't see myself reacting well to that. I don't have a lot of fanboy in me, but I have fanboy in me for that short story. So that's going to be a flying pig. I want to like T. Kingfisher, and I just don't think I'm gonna be receptive to someone messing with Poe's classic. Up next, we have Grady Hendrix, How to Sell a Haunted House, How to Put a Book in the Flying Pig category. So, Grady Hendrix, just not the author for me. I've had one experience with his work, and it was not a good experience. So I do not want to have a second one. The titles of his books also are quite cute, and I don't want cute in my horror. I'm a serious man. I want serious horror. So I think he writes for younger readers, and he leans into the cutesy aspect. And the other book I read from him was My Best Friend's Exorcism, and I did not like that at all. So I'm going to pass on his work. Next up, we have Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. Now, this book has a very high Goodreads rating of 4.15 stars. However, I was checking out some of the reviews, and a lot of the reviews mentioned things like right-wing propaganda. What? I don't want any propaganda in my horror books, or in any book, really. And right-wing propaganda is probably my least favorite of all the propagandas. Of all the propagandae. In fact, I want to share with you one of the reviews that I read for this book, which I found to be quite hilarious. So I wrote it out here. Let me read it for you. Wow. This book is even more of a mess than I anticipated. It's filled with conservative dog whistles, thinly veiled references to anti-trans rhetoric about trans kids, more than one positive reference to Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling, and those two things together in a book released in 2022 alone tells me a lot about the intentions of the author, plus fat phobia, racist stereotypes, and a whole lot of pointed jabs at leftists and atheists. So initially I found that review to be quite funny. Firstly, it starts with, this book is even more of a mess than I anticipated. So this reader anticipated it to be a mess. So I think they went into this with an agenda. I think they went into the read with expecting what they got out of it, so that they didn't set themselves up for success. Also, more than one positive reference to Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling, which I did not realize you cannot do that. I'll be honest with you, I have not read any of the Harry Potter books. I've not seen any of the Harry Potter movies. And I know that J.K. Rowling said some things that upset a lot of people, but I do not know what she said. I vaguely heard about the controversy, and I ran from it. It's like, oh, that does not sound like something I want to be a part of. I have no interest in that, getting into that mess. So I am neutral on the whole Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling thing. I'm neutral. Actually, I'm ignorant, like willfully ignorant. Like this is not something I want to get involved in. But I just thought it was interesting. Apparently, you can't make a positive reference to Harry Potter, and maybe the reviewer is justified, or maybe they're right. I have no idea. Like I said, I'm completely ignorant on the subject. But as funny as I thought that review was, I did see many reviews that echoed this sentiment um, about it being some form of propaganda. And even worse than that, or more problematic than that, for me at least, is that Jason Rekulek is a YA author, and apparently this was his first attempt at writing something for adults. And several reviewers mentioned that about halfway through, he kind of reverted to YA writing. So I don't think that Hidden Pictures is going to be a book for me. So I'll put it in Flying Pig category. Next up, The Changeling by Victor Laval. This book did not work on me at all. So this, no, you are not Jane Fonda material, The Changeling. So this is a book set in Manhattan, and it's about a troll, like a literal physical troll that steals babies. And it's also trying to make an analogy about internet trolls. This was a big fail for me. It read like Victor Laval was trying to write a screenplay, and then he changed his mind and just turned it into a novel. I mean, the chapters are about two pages long, maybe 3 at most. So it's very much on the surface. It's definitely not scary at all, and it's quite silly and quite preachy, and a lot. Yeah, it did not work on me. This book, The Changeling, though, it did win the prestigious August Derleth Award for Best Horror Novel of the Year, so it worked on some people, just not me. And if you'd like to hear my deeper dive into that book, I did a ranking of all the August Derleth Award winners. And The Changeling ranks quite low. Actually, I think at the very bottom. Up next, we have Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And I hate this book. Hate Frankenstein. It's not that I don't like it, it's that I hate it. It's not a novel, it's an essay. It's an essay disguised as a novel, which itself is disguised as a series of letters. And it might be a good essay, but when I pick up a novel, it's because I want to read a novel, not because I want to read an essay. So I'm not a fan of Frankenstein, and it's definitely not scary. Moving on, Let the Right One In by John Lindquist. I have not read this book. I have not seen any of the movies. I have heard a lot of good things about this book. It was a huge hit. I'm guessing it was a huge hit for a reason. It is about vampires, which I'm not really interested in vampires, although I have enjoyed a few vampire books. It's generally not a strong selling point for me, and it does feature kids. I'm not that interested in kids. But it's just been getting such a good buzz, and so many people have said good things about it that I will probably, definitely, maybe read this book one day. Moving on, we have The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty, and I will never read this book. It's probably a good book, but to be honest with you, I just have a problem with exorcisms. And I know that the book came out in 1971, so I'm happy to give it a pass. But today, 2024, and we're still getting books about exorcisms and movies about exorcisms, I find that very surprising. Because exorcisms, we know they happen. They occur throughout the world, especially in the countries that have a lot of Christian fundamentalism, like the U.S., and Uganda, some places in South America, and even in Europe. We have exorcisms. And they're performed on children, and they're a form of intense child abuse. So I am shocked that in today's supposed cancel culture, I'm surprised that we seem to be okay with this form of child abuse being presented as a legitimate solution to a legitimate problem, right? Demon possession. I'm shocked. And I'm not often an easily triggered person. I just find that a bit gross, and also it's just not very creative because yeah, maybe this first one by William Peter Blatty was excellent, but the slew of exorcism books and movies we've been getting since then, I would prefer something more creative, and I just have no interest in reading The Exorcist. Moving on, we have House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This is a masterpiece.
Don't forget to breathe.
This is a gorgeously constructed book, beautifully written. And there are several passages which are quite scary, actually. Especially the passage involving a book of matches. Wow. It is brilliant. If you have not read The House of Leaves, I strongly encourage you to do so, but I would encourage you to take your time with it. It's a dense book. It's a layered narrative, and it's not the kind of book you can read in just a few weeks. You have to take your time with it, but I think it's definitely worth it. And up next we have The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I love me some Shirley Jackson, and I love this book. Definitely Jane Fonda material.
Don't forget to breathe.
That's not my favorite book of Shirley Jackson's, but it is a book that I really loved. It's this woman, Eleanor. She goes off to this. She's been invited to participate in a weekend retreat at this house with 4 other people or 3 other people to determine or to see if the house is haunted or if there is any paranormal activity going on in there. And what I love about this book is that Eleanor, she spent her entire adulthood looking after her sick mother, and her mother passes away, and then she gets invited to go off on this retreat. And so this is really her first opportunity to interact with people as an adult, besides her sick mother. And she goes into this opportunity with unwarranted optimism. She just thinks it's going to be great, and she's going to meet exciting people. And I love the character. I love the opening for that, because I do much the same thing. I just jump into situations with unwarranted optimism. A few weeks ago, I moved from France to Latvia with really no plan, no research, just moved with unwarranted optimism, and I tend to do that quite a lot. So I connected immediately with this character, and I had a great time with that book. I'm not sure if it's scary. I mean, some people did find it scary. I didn't, but I loved it. Next up, we have The Monk by Matthew Lewis. Now, this is a book from 1796. Wow, that is a tough sell on me. But it's supposedly shocking, erotic, and violent. I like all 3 of those things, so that's nice. However, The Monk was written by Matthew Lewis when he was 19 years old. So like Frankenstein, which was written by a 19-year-old. I have a rule that I'm just going to create right now. I'm going to put this in the flying pig category because I will never read this book. Yeah, I have this rule that is you have to have at least 2 decades of life experience before I will read your book. So I'm not going to read The Monk. Next up, we have Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. I love that title. That's a good cover as well. This is from Eric LaRocca. I have not read Eric LaRocca before, and he's quite divisive. I mean, some people really love his work, but a lot of people really don't. And I'm kind of curious to know why he's such a contentious writer. So, Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke is a collection of 3 novellas, 3 short stories. And I need to check out Eric LaRocca. I need to find out what all the fuss is about. So I'm going to do that. Actually, this book actually has been on my TBR. It's been on my TBR for quite some time, but I will eventually definitely get around to it. Next up, we have Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. This is a book that should not have worked on me because it's borderline YA or YA. I mean, the protagonist is a teenager. Or actually, I think the protagonist is in her early 20s, but she talks like a teenager. It's also about exorcism, and it's a referential book. Lots of Easter eggs about horror books and horror movies. So it's not a book that should have worked on me, but it definitely did. I had a blast with this book.
Don't forget to breathe.
I think Paul Tremblay is an excellent writer. This is a book about exorcism, but it's done responsibly, which is the proof that you can still do it. You can be creative and responsible and still talk about exorcism. But honestly, A Head Full of Ghosts is the only book that I have read that manages to do that. Yeah, I really like that book. Surprisingly so. Next up, we have The Ring by Koji Suzuki. This was a big hit, right? Made into 2 movies. I did see the American version, the American movie, and it was okay. It is about a ghost, I think, if I remember correctly, where it's about a video. You watch a video and then 7 days later you die or something, unless you do something. So, interesting premise. And also a Japanese horror book. These have not worked on me before in a small sample size, so I would like to read a Japanese horror that I do like. And this might just be the one. And I'm willing to give it a shot, especially because it's such a huge hit and I've heard good things about it. So I will definitely maybe check that out. Next up, we have Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is a classic and a well-deserved classic.
Don't forget to breathe.
Dracula has an amazing opening when we go to Dracula's castle and we meet Count Dracula for the first time. It's a fantastic presentation of the villain. Excellent opening. The story kind of meanders and gets lost a bit in the middle, and the ending's okay. But there's enough in this book that I really liked that I would consider it Jane Fonda material. Next up, we have The Hunger by Alma Katsu from 2018. When this book came out in 2018, it got a lot of buzz. I heard many good things about it. Many people told me I should read it. I didn't read it. It's a historical fiction, which I tend to like historical fiction. Horror. This is a group of pioneers. They set out to cross a wagon trail and they encounter difficulties. I kind of missed the boat on this one. I should have read it when it came out. But, better late than never, I say. So, I will probably definitely be checking out that book. And we'll end with The Shining by Stephen King, which is a book that a lot of people love. And I am not one of those people. This is a Steven Seagal book, if there ever was one. Yeah, I read this book as an adult, as a middle-aged man. And I think this book is, you need to be an impressionable teenager to appreciate this book. I did not appreciate it at all. I was shocked reading it because I did not understand how it became a hit. Now, I did like the follow-up. I loved Dr. Sleep, but The Shining did not work on me at all. It features a fire hose that comes to life, and that's supposed to be scary. I suppose a fire hose is scary if you're fire, but I'm not a fire. It also has hedge animals that come to life. It's super silly, and yeah, it just didn't work on me at all. And I understand that I understand a lot of people love this book, and people love Stephen King, and I have gotten some flack in the past for not being a super huge Stephen King fan, but what can I say? I mean, we all have different opinions. We have different experiences that we bring to the reads. And yeah, my opinion is not going to be the same as yours, obviously. But there it is, my opinion. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Jane Fonda books. That's a pretty good ratio, I think. And these 7 books are excellent too, by the way. So I highly recommend all 7 of those. Do you have any experience with these books, with these authors, especially the ones that I haven't read? I'd love to hear your opinions on them. And thank you for watching. I'll see you at the next video.